At Harvard University's prestigious lecture hall, sunlight filtered through tall arched windows, casting a golden glow over polished wooden floors. The air buzzed with the quiet hum of anticipation as students filled the seats, their notebooks open, laptops humming. At the front, Professor Grant, a man whose reputation for brilliance was rivaled only by his sharp-cutting humor, paced near the blackboard. His lectures were the stuff of campus legend, both enlightening and intimidating. That morning he was in the 0 hours 0 minutes and 35 seconds to 0 hours 1 minute and 46 seconds. Middle of an elaborate derivation, chalk tapping rapidly, when the side door creaked open, heads turned toward the small interruption. Lily, a slim 17-year-old with deep brown eyes and a nervous grip on a box of supplies, stepped into the room, behind her. Her father followed, wearing the navy blue uniform of Harvard's janitorial staff. His hands were calloused, his hair peppered with gray, and his movements quiet, as though trying not to disturb the intellectual temple they had just entered. The professor paused, chalk in 0 hours 1 minute and 11 seconds to 0 hours 2 minutes and 18 seconds. Midair, his expressions sharpening with curiosity, and something else mild irritation. A smattering of murmurs moved through the students like a breeze. The pair walked toward the side cabinet, setting down cleaning supplies and restocking paper towels. Some students pretended to look away, though a few couldn't resist smirking. Professor Grant cleared his throat, theatrically tapping the chalk against the board. "Careful," he said, his voice carrying just enough for everyone to hear. "This isn't a place for cleaning. 0 hours 1 minute and 44 seconds to 0 hours 2 minutes and 56 seconds. Lessons." A ripple of restrained laughter spread through the hall. Lily froze in place, heat flooding her cheeks, but her father didn't flinch. He glanced at her, offering a subtle, encouraging nod as if to say, "Let them laugh." The professor turned back to the board, resuming his rapid-fire explanation about advanced differential equations, his voice a mix of brilliance and arrogance. Lily moved toward the back of the room, drawn not to escape the laughter, but to watch the neat lines of chalk forming. 0 hours 2 minutes and 20 seconds to 0 hours 3 minutes and 24 seconds. Symbols and numbers she recognized. Her father finished stacking supplies, but she lingered, her gaze locked on the blackboard. She'd spent years devouring math textbooks from the public library, solving problems on scrap paper late into the night. To her, these equations weren't alien. They were like an old language she'd learned in secret. Grant glanced over his shoulder, noticing her still there. "Something you find interesting?" he asked, one eyebrow raised. A few students shifted in there. 0 hours 2 minutes and 52 seconds to 0 hours 3 minutes and 59 seconds. Seats, sensing an opportunity for entertainment. "Think you can solve this?" he added, gesturing at a long, half-finished equation sprawling across the board. The tone in his voice carried a challenge wrapped in disbelief. A couple of students chuckled openly this time, clearly, expecting the janitor's daughter to blush, stammer, and retreat. Lily straightened slightly, but said nothing. She looked at her father, who gave her the smallest of smiles. The chalk in Grant's hand was now extended. 0 hours 3 minutes and 26 seconds to 0 hours 4 minutes and 34 seconds. Toward her like a dare. "Go ahead," he said, tapping the wooden ledge beneath the blackboard. A few students began pulling out their phones, smirking, ready to record what they assumed would be a moment of awkward humiliation. Lily's fingers tightened on the strap of her worn backpack, the decision swirling in her mind. She stepped forward slowly, the sound of her sneakers soft on the polished floor. The professor stepped aside with a faint smirk, expecting her to freeze up any second now. She took 0 hours 4 minutes and 0 seconds to 0 hours 5 minutes and 11 seconds. The chalk, its dust clinging instantly to her fingertips. The blackboard loomed in front of her, but she didn't feel small. Instead, she felt the quiet hum of focus settling over her. The way it did whenever she solved problems at home, her eyes traced the equation, spotting the familiar structure of a partial differential form with a subtle misalignment in the second term. She began writing, her movements precise, her script clean, the sound of chalk on slate was sharp in the silent room, every stroke deliberate. Her father, 0 hours 4 minutes and 35 seconds to 0 hours 5 minutes and 41 seconds. Stood near the back, his hands clasped. Students who had been smiling began leaning forward, their brows furrowing as they followed her work. She moved down the board, carrying the equation through its transformations. In less than 2 minutes, She not only completed the derivation, but subtly corrected the professor's earlier mistake, a miscalculation buried in the complexity of his own notes. She capped the final line with a small underline, then set the chalk down, stepping back without flourish. There. 0 hours 5 minutes and 9 seconds to 0 hours 6 minutes and 22 seconds. Was no trembling in her hands, no hesitation in her eyes, only quiet certainty. The professor stared at the board, his lips parting slightly. His smirk was gone, replaced by an expression of puzzled respect. He rechecked the steps quickly, his eyes darting from term to term. She was right, she had not only solved it, but improved it. Where did you learn this? He asked, his voice lower now, stripped of the earlier mockery. Lily glanced over her shoulder at her father. From my dad and a lot of library. 0 hours 5 minutes and 45 seconds to 0 hours 6 minutes and 52 seconds. Books, she said simply. The room remained still, the only sound the faint whir of the overhead projector. Her father's chest rose with pride, though he stayed quiet, letting his daughter stand on her own merit. A student in the back whispered something like, "No way." But no one laughed now. Phones that had been lifted to capture her failure were still recording, but this time they were capturing history in the making. Professor Grant, whose ego rarely allowed room for humility, gave a single. 0 hours 6 minutes and 18 seconds to 0 hours 7 minutes and 22 seconds. Nod. Well, he said slowly, seems I underestimated you. Lily didn't smile, didn't gloat. She simply gave a small nod of acknowledgement. Her father joined her at the front and together they left the lecture hall. The weight of the silence following them. The heavy oak door closed behind them, but inside conversations began to ripple through the crowd. Students replayed the moment on their phones, exchanging glances, some looking ashamed of their earlier laughter. Grant stared at the equations. 0 hours 6 minutes and 51 seconds to 0 hours 8 minutes and 1 second. For a long time before resuming his lecture, though something in his voice had shifted, less arrogance, more care with his words, and somewhere down the hall, Lily was walking beside her father, the chalk dust still on her fingertips, a quiet smile breaking across her face. Lily placed the chalk back in the tray, and her fingers leaving faint smudges of white dust. The silence in the hall felt heavy yet empowering. Her father, standing near the door, kept his eyes on her with a look that mixed pride, love. 0 hours 7 minutes and 26 seconds to 0 hours 8 minutes and 35 seconds. And years of quiet sacrifice. The professor, still gripping his pointer, stepped closer to the board, scanning her work line by line. Every number was precise, every symbol in place. The correction she made was subtle, so subtle that most of the class wouldn't have caught it. But to someone of his expertise, it was impossible to ignore. A whisper traveled through the rows of students, rising like a tide. She's right, someone murmured. Another student leaned forward, pulling out his 0 hours 8 minutes and 1 second to 0 hours 9 minutes and 11 seconds. Phone to take a closer video. Grant's fingers traced the chalk marks she'd made, pausing at the corrected step. He looked back at her, his earlier smirk replaced by something far more complex. Respect mingled with disbelief. You caught an inversion error, he said slowly. Lily simply nodded. It was throwing off the final variable, she replied. Her voice was calm, almost soft, but carried clearly through the stunned silence. The professor turned to the class. Do you understand how rare? 0 hours 8 minutes and 36 seconds to 0 hours 9 minutes and 43 seconds. That is, he asked, his voice sharper now. This isn't a beginner's puzzle. It's graduate-level work, and she corrected me. Some students exchanged guilty glances, remembering the laughter when Lily entered. Her father shifted uncomfortably, unsure if he should step back or forward. Lily stood still, meeting Grant's gaze without fear. Numbers don't care who solves them, she said. That statement landed heavier than anything she had just written on the board. Grant walked toward his desk. 0 hours 9 minutes and 10 seconds to 0 hours 10 minutes and 19 seconds. Setting down the pointer, he leaned against it, folding his arms. How old are you? He asked. 17, Lily answered. A murmur rippled through the room again. And you've studied mathematics? Where? He pressed. Lily smiled faintly. Here. Well, not in your classes, just in your library. She glanced toward the shelves lining the far wall. I've been coming with my dad for years, whenever he works late. Books don't care about titles, either. The quiet confidence in her 0 hours 9 minutes and 44 seconds to 0 hours 10 minutes and 45 seconds. Voice surprised even herself. Her father's throat tightened, his eyes stinging. He had always known Lily was bright, but to see her stand in the middle of a Harvard lecture hall challenging a professor felt surreal. Granted, greater than then gestured to the front row. Sit, he said, motioning to an empty seat. The students nearest the aisle quickly shifted to make room. Lily hesitated, glancing at father. He gave a small nod, the kind only a parent gives when they know their child belongs somewhere. 0 hours 10 minutes and 14 seconds to 0 hours 11 minutes and 17 seconds. They've earned. Lily walked to the seat, her sneakers squeaking slightly against the polished floor. As she sat, the professor resumed his lecture, but something in his tone had changed. Instead of speaking down to the class, he seemed to be speaking across as if everyone in the room might be capable of contributing. Midway through, he glanced at Lily again. You're welcome to attend these lectures any time, he said. Her heart skipped, but she kept her expression neutral, choosing only to nod. 0 hours 10 minutes and 46 seconds to 0 hours 11 minutes and 54 seconds. In acknowledgement, during the break, students gathered near her, curiosity overcoming earlier judgment. One young man leaned in. Did you really just figure that out on the spot? Lily shrugged. It's not about knowing the answer. It's about seeing the path to it. Another student, a girl with thick glasses, whispered, that was incredible. You should join the math club here. Lily laughed softly. I don't go here, I just visit. Still, there was a shift. She was no longer 0 hours 11 minutes and 20 seconds to 0 hours 12 minutes and 30 seconds. Just the janitor's daughter in their eyes. She had become the girl who silenced the room with numbers. Her father approached during the pause, setting his hand lightly on her shoulder. You okay? He asked quietly. Yeah, Lily said, smiling. More than okay. She glanced around the lecture hall, noticing how even the students who had laughed earlier were now looking at her with something different interest, maybe even admiration. You've always belonged here, her father. 0 hours 11 minutes and 54 seconds to 0 hours 13 minutes and 13 seconds. Murmured almost to himself. Lily's chest tightened at his words. Belonging had always felt like a distant dream, but in this moment it felt real. When class resumed, Grant presented an even more challenging equation. This one requiring multiple advanced concepts to solve. He scanned the room before finally locking eyes with Lily. Care to try again? The question hung in the air. Few students smirked again, but this time it wasn't mocking, it was anticipation. Lily stood, walking to the board without 0 hours 12 minutes and 33 seconds to 0 hours 13 minutes and 43 seconds. Hesitation. She read the equation twice, then began writing. The chalk moved in, steady arcs, her breathing, even her thoughts flowing faster than her hand could write. The room was silent except for the faint squeak of chalk. Halfway through, she stopped, stepping back to examine her work. She made a quick adjustment, then completed the final step. The answer appeared at the bottom in crisp, confident numbers. Turning to the professor, she stepped aside so the class could see. Grant studied it for a 0 hours 13 minutes and 8 seconds to 0 hours 14 minutes and 15 seconds. Long moment, then nodded slowly. Perfect, he said. A wave of murmurs filled the hall. Again, for a second time, she had delivered under pressure, without notes, without hesitation, and without any formal instruction from this institution. Her father's eyes glistened. After class, Grant approached her father. She's remarkable, he said plainly. Do you realize what she's capable of? The older man smiled humbly. I've always known, he replied. I just didn't think anyone else would. 0 hours 13 minutes and 43 seconds to 0 hours 14 minutes and 59 seconds. See it. Grant reached into his briefcase and pulled out a business card. There's a summer program here for gifted students. I'll make sure she's invited. No cost. Lily's father took the card, his hands trembling slightly. Thank you, he said, his voice thick. Grant simply nodded. She earned it. Today proved that. As the students filed out, several stopped to congratulate Lily. Some even asked if she could tutor them. It was strange. People who hadn't given her a second glance before now saw her as someone too. 0 hours 14 minutes and 20 seconds to 0 hours 15 minutes and 28 seconds. Learn from. Lily didn't gloat. She just smiled politely, answering their questions. When the room finally emptied, she turned to her father. Ready to go? She asked. He nodded, but not before glancing back at the chalkboard one last time. Her work was still there, bright white against the black surface, a quiet declaration that brilliance can come from anywhere. They walked out together, the evening sun spilling golden light across the campus lawns. Students lounged in small groups. 0 hours 14 minutes and 55 seconds to 0 hours 16 minutes and 6 seconds. Some still whispering about what had happened in the lecture hall. Lily felt lightness in her chest as if the weight of assumptions had been lifted. Her father draped an arm around her shoulders. "You didn't just solve equations today," he said. "You changed the way they see you." Lily leaned into him. "Maybe," she said, "but I'm more interested in changing the way they see people like us." The path toward the parking lot felt shorter that evening. The air was cool, and the sounds of campus life filled the 0 hours 15 minutes and 30 seconds to 0 hours 16 minutes and 40 seconds. Background. As they reached the maintenance van, Lily paused, looking back at the tall stone buildings. She wasn't a student here, not yet, but she knew she would be someday. Her father unlocked the van, and they drove away. The lights of Harvard fading in the rear view mirror. Inside the lecture hall they had left behind, faint traces of chalk still marked her work, a quiet reminder that brilliance had walked in, unannounced, and left its mark forever. The following Monday, the Harvard campus. 0 hours 16 minutes and 5 seconds to 0 hours 17 minutes and 7 seconds. Buzzed with whispers, and Lily found herself walking through corridors where professors nodded respectfully, and students watched curiously. She wasn't used to the attention, but her father reminded her, this is not about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. That day, the Harvard Crimson published her story under the headline, Janitor's Daughter Schools Harvard Professor. The photo of her standing at the chalkboard, chalk dust still on her fingers, became 0 hours 16 minutes and 36 seconds to 0 hours 17 minutes and 45 seconds. Iconic. Emails poured in from strangers, students, teachers, and parents thanking her for showing that brilliance could come from anywhere. An unexpected letter arrived for Lily, printed on elegant Harvard letterhead. It was an official invitation to attend advanced mathematics seminars as a guest, tuition-free. The note was signed personally by Professor Grant. When she read it aloud to her father, his eyes welled up with pride. He had worked at Harvard for over 2 decades, often invisible in the 0 hours 17 minutes and 11 seconds to 0 hours 18 minutes and 16 seconds. Background. But now his daughter's name was being spoken with respect in the same halls. That evening, over a simple dinner, they quietly celebrated with takeout pizza and laughter. Word of her talent spread beyond the university. Local news outlets covered her story, calling her the Harvard Hall genius. Interviews followed where Lily spoke modestly about her love for math and how her father had inspired her work ethic. She explained how her passion began by solving puzzles in old library books. 0 hours 17 minutes and 43 seconds to 0 hours 18 minutes and 50 seconds. Brought home after work. "I never thought I'd be standing in a Harvard lecture hall," she told one reporter. "But I guess numbers don't care about where you're from." Her sincerity resonated with millions watching. Professor Grant, who had once mocked her, surprised everyone when he invited Lily and her father to his office for a private conversation. He admitted he'd been wrong about her, about his assumptions, and about underestimating people outside the academic elite. "You've taught me more. 0 hours 18 minutes and 17 seconds to 0 hours 19 minutes and 26 seconds. In a moment than I've taught in years," he confessed. He offered his personal mentorship, promising to guide her in mathematics and academic opportunities if she wished to pursue them. Lily accepted, not out of spite but gratitude. That spring, Harvard announced a charity event to raise funds for scholarships aimed at students from working-class families. Professor Grant recommended Lily as a guest speaker, a suggestion that initially shocked the organizing committee, but once they learned her 0 hours 18 minutes and 51 seconds to 0 hours 20 minutes and 6 seconds story, they embraced it. Flyers were printed with her name alongside renowned scholars. The event sold out in days, tickets purchased by donors eager to hear the young woman who had humbled one of Harvard's toughest professors. On the night of the event, the lecture hall was unrecognizable from the day she first stood there. Elegant decorations lined the aisles. Soft golden lights illuminated the stage, and the air buzzed with anticipation. Lily waited backstage, dressed in a simple but graceful navy dress. Her 0 hours 19 minutes and 29 seconds to 0 hours 20 minutes and 35 seconds. Father had bought on sale. She clutched her note cards, though she'd memorized every word. Her father, seated in the front row, wore his neatly pressed janitor's uniform by choice because it was part of their truth. When Lily stepped onto the stage, the applause began immediately. She paused, took a deep breath, and began speaking, not about equations, but about resilience. She shared how the world often measures people by where they start rather than where they can go. She spoke of her 0 hours 20 minutes and 2 seconds to 0 hours 21 minutes and 3 seconds. Father's sacrifices, of nights spent studying under flickering fluorescent lights in their modest apartment, and of the day she walked into Harvard thinking she was invisible. She ended with a truth that silenced the room. Genius doesn't come from privilege. It comes from persistence. By the time she finished, the audience was on its feet. The sound of their applause filled every corner of the hall, echoing off the marble walls. Her father wiped his eyes openly, unashamed of the tears that 0 hours 20 minutes and 33 seconds to 0 hours 21 minutes and 46 seconds rolled down his face. Professor Grant stood as well, clapping harder than anyone else. Cameras flashed as donors wrote checks inspired by the speech. The event shattered fundraising records, ensuring dozens of future scholarships for students who might otherwise never dream of Harvard. After the event, people swarmed around her: professors, journalists, alumni. Many asked for autographs, others for photographs, and some simply shook her hand and thanked her. A well-dressed, elderly woman, herself, an alumna from the 1960s. 0 hours 21 minutes and 9 seconds to 0 hours 22 minutes and 22 seconds. Pressed a small velvet box into Lily's hand. Inside was a gold pendant shaped like an infinity symbol. For limitless possibilities, the woman whispered. Lily smiled and promised to wear it at every academic milestone. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything in that moment. In the weeks that followed, Lily adjusted to her new reality. She still helped her father clean classrooms on weekends, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. It reminded her of where she came from and kept her 0 hours 21 minutes and 46 seconds to 0 hours 22 minutes and 55 seconds. Grounded amid the sudden attention, Harvard students who once barely noticed her now stopped to greet her, ask for help on assignments or invite her to study sessions. Slowly, the walls that had once felt so rigid began to open, letting her in. Her father, too, found his life transformed. The university administration recognized his years of service in a formal ceremony, presenting him with an award for dedication. Standing on that stage beside Lily, he felt a pride he had never imagined possible. 0 hours 22 minutes and 20 seconds to 0 hours 23 minutes and 25 seconds. I always told her she could shine anywhere, he said into the microphone, but I never thought she'd light up. Harvard, the audience erupted in cheers. It was a rare moment when the line between staff and scholar blurred completely. As spring turned into summer, Lily received offers from multiple prestigious programs, including a summer research fellowship at MIT. She chose to stay close to home, splitting her time between Harvard's math department and volunteering at a local 0 hours 22 minutes and 53 seconds to 0 hours 23 minutes and 57 seconds community center, tutoring kids who reminded her of herself at their age. Bright, curious, but unsure if they belonged in academic spaces. You belong, she would tell them over and over until they believed it, too. Her father often joined her, fixing chairs or cleaning the center while she taught. Months later, Lily returned to the same Harvard lecture hall for another event. This time, as the youngest panelist at an international mathematics conference, she sat between two celebrated 0 hours 23 minutes and 25 seconds to 0 hours 24 minutes and 36 seconds mathematicians, confidently answering questions from an audience of experts. Outside, reporters waited to capture her story again. Inside, the walls seemed warmer, the air lighter. She glanced to the front row where her father sat, leaning forward with the same proud expression he had worn from the very first day. That evening, after the conference ended, Lily and her father walked home through the quiet streets of Cambridge. They didn't speak much, but the silence between them was full of gratitude, of dreams, realized of 0 hours 24 minutes and 0 seconds to 0 hours 25 minutes and 12 seconds. Challenges yet to come. Passing the gates of Harvard, she stopped for a moment, looking back at the buildings that had once felt unreachable. We did it, she said softly. Her father put an arm around her shoulder. No, he corrected gently. You did it. I just held the door. And so the same lecture hall that had once erupted in laughter at her expense had become a place where her voice carried respect, where her name inspired others. Her story traveled far beyond Harvard's walls, reminding 0 hours 24 minutes and 37 seconds to 0 hours 25 minutes and 13 seconds. People that brilliance can come from anywhere and that the quietest person in the room might hold the loudest truth. For Lily, it was never about proving a professor wrong. It was about proving to herself and to the world that she was always meant to be.